So I'm sure we're all keeping up with this year's election, Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump. And you know what I've been seeing a lot of? Kamala Harris lies. She goes on this debate stage and lies, or this interview and lies. She sits across from Oprah and lies. And you know what? We're trying to keep up. We're trying to fact check. But I think we need to keep all the lies and fact checks in one place. So today's video is all about fact checking Kamala Harris. And she lies so much that we're probably going to have to make a part 2. So let's get into it.
Yeah, you better. Yeah, you better.
Alright guys, before we get into today's video, please like and subscribe. And I think this video is going to be a shareable one. If you know somebody who's a fan of Kamala Harris or plans on supporting her, maybe let them check out the many lies she's told on the campaign trail. If you know somebody who's not a fan of Kamala Harris, maybe they need all the fact checks in one spot so they can keep up to date with all the lies she's telling. And without further ado, we're going to get straight into it. Now, interestingly enough, Kamala Harris has been on a bit of a media blitz as of late, and she recently appeared on The View, where she was asked if she would have done anything differently when compared to Joe Biden these past 4 years. This was her response.
Well, if anything, would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Now, funnily enough, this is Kamala Harris actually fact-checking herself, as she's been running this entire campaign on this idea of transformation and change, that she wasn't going to be an extension of the presidency that we saw with Joe Biden. But it seems like a Freudian slip here on The View, where she confirms it's gonna be a lot like what we've seen with President Joe Biden. And we all know what that looks and feels like. And Kamala Harris is quite a flip-flopper on her stances, and this one is going to be happening in record time. She appeared on The View in the afternoon, then hit a late-night show that evening, and this is what she said about her presidency and what it's going to look like.
You know, folks are ready to turn the page. It's like, let's chart a new way forward. And what I'm seeing is that a lot of Americans, regardless of their party, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, they're ready for a new generation of leadership that is about solutions and common sense and finding common ground. And that is what I am offering.
And when Colbert tries to really pin her down on an answer about what would change, here's her response.
Polling shows that a lot of people, especially independent voters, really want this to be a change election, and that they tend to break for you in terms of thinking about change. You are a member of the President administration. Under a Harris administration, what would the major changes be, and what would stay the same?
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm obviously not Joe Biden.
I know.
And so that would be one change in terms of, but also I think it's important to say with, 28 days to go, I'm not Donald Trump. And so when we think about the significance of what this next generation of leadership looks like, were I to be elected president, it is about, frankly, I love the American people, and I believe in our country. I love that it is our character and nature to be an ambitious people. We have aspirations, we have dreams, we have incredible work ethic, and I just believe that we can create and build upon the success we've achieved in a way that we continue to grow.
A perfect politician's non-answer. And you'll find that if you go through Kamala Harris's interviews, and when she's asked about changes she's going to make or how she's going to come up with solutions to problems, she gives this same word salad answer every time. Americans are ambitious. We're optimistic. We have dreams.
Yours is a story I hear around the country as I travel. And in terms of both rightly having the right to have aspirations and dreams and ambitions for your family, and working hard and finding that the American dream is, for this generation and so many recently, far more elusive than it's been.
But she doesn't talk about how she's going to make those dreams take place. And even if she did have solutions to our problems or ways for us to chase our dreams and be more aspirational here in the United States, because that's how we Americans are, you can't really trust that she's going to even stick to her original answer. Kamala Harris is known to flip-flop on any given occasion, on any given topic. She sort of licks her finger, sticks it out, and moves her answer in whichever way the wind is blowing. And today we're gonna go through some of her flip-flop answers, starting with taking your guns away. In our most recent 2024 presidential debate, Kamala Harris said this about taking people's guns away.
Then this business about taking everyone's guns away, Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away, so stop with the continuous lying about this stuff.
Somebody needs to practice what they preach and stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. Less than a week later, Kamala Harris tweeted out this picture. Congress must renew the assault weapons ban. Ban assault weapons. She's also said this when asked about her gun control agenda.
Your gun control agenda?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, but I mean, listen, I don't think we lack for great ideas. As I've said many times, we've been having great ideas for decades. The problem is that Congress has not had the courage to act. And that is why, from the beginning, I have said, my agenda includes attempting to get Congress to act, but if they don't within the first 100 days of my administration, I'm going to take executive action. Because what we need is action.
You heard it from the horse's mouth. She will take executive action to have your guns taken away. And funnily enough, years ago in a Democratic primary debate, Joe Biden criticized Kamala Harris for this stance and said it was unconstitutional.
Your first 100 days, including banning imports of AR-15 assault weapons.
That's right.
President Obama, after Sandy Hook, more than 23 executive actions, and yet here we all are today. In recent days, former Vice President Biden has said about executive orders, some really talented people are seeking the nomination. They said, I'm going to issue an executive order. Biden saying there's no constitutional authority to issue that executive order when they say I'm going to eliminate assault weapons, saying you can't do it by executive order any more than Trump can do things when he says he can do it by executive order. Does the vice president have a point there?
Some things you can, many things you can't.
Let's let the senator answer.
Well, I mean, I would just say, hey, Joe, instead of saying no, we can't, let's say yes, we can.
Let's be constitutional. We got a constitution.
She's reiterated her stance on taking guns away on Jimmy Fallon's late night show.
Do you believe in the mandatory buyback of quote-unquote assault weapons? And whether or not you do, how does that idea not go against fundamentally the Second Amendment?
Yeah, great question. I do believe that we need to do buybacks, and I'll tell you why.
And this is all very interesting because in many an interview recently, Kamala Harris has openly spoken about the fact that she owns a Glock that she's used on many occasions. Let's hear her on 60 Minutes say exactly that.
So what kind of gun do you own, and when and why did you get it?
I have a Glock, and I've had it for quite some time.
Here's another clip of her saying something similar, and for some reason she gets deeply uncomfortable when asked to explain any further her relationship with this Glock that she owns.
Well, real quick, have you shot a gun?
Yes, I have.
Well, tell us about the last time.
No.
No, but do you like hunt or like what do you do?
I'm a good marksman. Yes, I have shot a gun many times.
You're a good marksperson with a pistol or a rifle?
A pistol. And I'm not, that's it. I'm not going any further with this.
Concealed weapon permit? Or...
I'm not going any further with this.
So why won't you explain what you use the gun for, why you have it? You don't want to talk about whether or not you have a weapons permit for the firearm. That's really interesting. And it's so weird that we're suddenly hearing about this Glock because when Kamala Harris was a district attorney in San Francisco, she promoted banning handguns. And I'm not the only one who's suspicious about this. Many have asked her to prove that she has a registered weapon. And we also have this article out of New York Post. Let's read the headline. Kamala Harris says she owns a Glock despite supporting handgun bans in San Francisco, prompting speculation it's unregistered. Will we ever find out the truth there? I'm gonna guess not. And even so, it's an inconsistent opinion considering that she supported handgun bans, but let's move on. In her 2024 presidential debate, Kamala Harris said she had no intention of banning fracking.
I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States.
This is really interesting considering we have this video.
There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So, yeah.
So either Kamala Harris actually does want to ban fracking, or she's so open-minded and so willing to change her heart based on the things she hears. And if that's the case, how can we ever hold her to anything that she says, ever? Moving on, in regard to our active duty military, Kamala Harris said this on debate night. And let's make sure you guys see the soldier at the beginning of this video.
And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world the first time this century. What? But let's understand.
So where the are we right now?
Is there nothing that Mrs. Kamala Harris won't lie about? The answer is yes. Moving on to immigration. In a recent interview with 60 Minutes, Kamala Harris was asked about her immigration stance. Their administration has currently been working on the immigration problem. You know, the immigration problem that they created by rolling back Trump policies. And here was her answer.
You recently visited the southern border and embraced President Biden's recent crackdown on asylum seekers. And that crackdown produced an almost immediate and dramatic decrease in the number of border crossings. If that's the right answer now, why didn't your administration take those steps in 2021?
The first bill we proposed to Congress was to fix our broken immigration system, knowing that if you want to actually fix it, we need Congress to act. It was not taken up. Fast forward to a moment when a bipartisan group of members of the United States Senate, including one of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, got together, came up with a border security bill. Well, guess what happened? Donald Trump got word that this bill was afoot and could be passed, and he wants to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. So he told his buddies in Congress, kill the bill, don't let it move forward.
But I've been covering the border for years, and so I know this is not a problem that started with your administration.
Correct.
But there was an historic flood of undocumented immigrants coming across the border the first 3 years of your administration. As a matter of fact, arrivals quadrupled from the last year of President Trump. Was it a mistake to loosen the immigration policies as much as you did?
It's a long-standing problem. And solutions are at hand. And from day one, literally, we have been offering solutions.
What I was asking was it a mistake to kind of allow that flood to happen in the first place?
I think the policies that we have been proposing are about fixing a problem, not promoting a problem. Okay?
But the numbers did quadruple.
And the numbers today,
watch.
because of what we have done, we have cut the flow of illegal immigration by half.
But should you
we
have
have
done
cut
that?
the
Should you
flow
have
of
done that?
fentanyl by half, but we need Congress to be able to act to actually fix the problem.
And this seems to be the prevailing narrative on the left. We had a border bill. It was going to solve the issue that we created. I think they leave that last part out. And Trump killed the bill. He made sure that it didn't go through. He made sure that the problem at our southern border persisted, the problem that he had largely solved, interestingly enough. They also leave out the fact that this bill had hundreds of billions of dollars being sent to Ukraine and Israel. And only 17% of the funding that was packed into this bill was actually going to be used for the southern border. But let's run a video and do a little bit of a fact check.
You need to set the record straight about the Senate bill and actually H.R. 2. When the Senate bill was actually published, I remember I was at a dinner Sunday night when it came out, when the text came out. I read the text of the Senate bill. Many members in the House read the text of the Senate bill. Members contacted Speaker Johnson, and we were very clear. There is no way the Senate bill should get a vote in the House because it is a terrible piece of legislation that will not secure the southern border. House Republicans have passed border security measures, H.R. 2. We did it more than a year ago. Has Chuck Schumer brought it up for even debate or a vote in the Senate? No, he has not. Has the White House decided to reach out to the Speaker Johnson to debate and deliberate or negotiate or compromise on H.R. 2 and its elements to secure the southern border? No, they have not. They're in charge in the Senate and in the White House. They've done nothing except a bill that couldn't even make it out of the Senate. So I think it's important to set the record straight. Oh, also, by the way, House Republicans weren't going to vote for that bill, and that was before Donald Trump even made his view known on the Senate compromise bill. We were already against it when the bill text came out because it's a trash bill. Now, moving on.
So all of a sudden, Kamala Harris cares about the border and she wants to solve the issue and she's working on it now, even though she had years to do so. It's interesting that around election time, people start caring about things that they've put no effort into whatsoever, even though she is the border czar. But it's not surprising considering Kamala Harris gave this answer when asked about visiting the border in the past.
Okay. Do you have any plans to visit the border?
At some point, we are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making. I'm not discounting the importance of the border.
I'll let that clip speak for itself. All right, on to other lies. Here's Kamala Harris talking to her Michigan constituents, saying she's not going to tell them what car to drive.
And Michigan, let us be clear. Contrary to what my opponent is suggesting, I will never tell you what kind of car you have to drive.
And that's interesting because Senator Kamala Harris co-sponsored the Zero Emission Vehicles Act of 2019, which would effectively ban gas vehicles by 2040. But I guess that bill just fell out of a coconut tree.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you.
And I guess we need to remind Kamala Harris that she exists in the context of all in which she's lived and all of what came before, because we have the receipts from before. Another recent stop on her media blitz has been the Call Her Daddy podcast hosted by Alex Cooper, where she said this on the topic of abortion.
I do want to clarify something. In the debate, former President Trump claimed that some states are executing babies after birth. Can you just clarify?
That is not happening anywhere in the United States. It is not happening, and it's a lie. It's a bold-faced lie that he is suggesting that, can you imagine? Can you imagine? He is suggesting that women in their 9th month of pregnancy are electing to have an abortion? Are you kidding? That is so outrageously inaccurate, and it's so insulting.
So yeah, Donald Trump made a bold claim that babies are being killed after birth. Is the claim true though? Let's check it out. Tim Walz repealed Minnesota law protecting babies born after failed abortions. 5 babies died in Minnesota after they were born alive due to a failed induced abortion in 2021. And there are other stories detailing this complication that can occur when you have a failed abortion, the baby is born alive, and in some states the doctor is not then obligated to give medical care to that child, resulting in death. So yes, it may sound extreme, but it does in fact happen. Also on the topic of abortion on this podcast, she brought up the story of Amber Thurman, a woman who died after a botched abortion. Let's watch the clip.
Unfortunately, we have these real life names. We have these horrific moments that these people are losing their lives, right? We have a woman named Amber Thurman who died in Georgia because the abortion bans in that state, the doctors were too afraid to treat her. Yeah. I know that you spoke to her family.
Yeah.
What was that conversation like?
It was heartbreaking, Alex. It was heartbreaking.
If you want the true story of Amber Thurman, I did a whole video on this if you want great detail, but I'll give you a short story here. Amber Thurman traveled out of her state to receive an abortion. She was late for that appointment, ended up being given abortion pills. She took those abortion pills and ended up having complications, specifically that there was still fetal tissue in her uterus that needed to be removed. This is perfectly legal in the state of Georgia where she resides, and there is no evidence to suggest that doctors were scared about performing this DNC on her due to abortion laws in the state. Amber Thurman died of an infection and a failure to perform a DNC. She did not die because of abortion laws, yet Kamala Harris continues to run with the lie. And it must not be skipped over that Kamala Harris is extending this same lie to the family of Amber Thurman. Can you imagine the pain and the hurt of losing your daughter, your niece, your aunt, and then being told by somebody who's running for president that it's due to abortion laws when that is in fact not the case? And it's all because she wants to paint a specific picture of her opponent, Donald Trump, and she will stop nowhere in trying to paint this man in a negative light. She even tries to attach him to Project 2025.
Heard me say before, he is an unserious man. But the consequences of putting him back in the White House are extremely serious. Extremely serious. Just Google Project 2025.
And that would be a really heavy-hitting point if Trump had anything to do with Project 2025. In fact, on several occasions, Trump has distanced himself from Project 2025 and says, I have nothing to do with everything that's going on and with the papers that they are writing up. In fact, Project 2025 and plans like it built out by the Heritage Foundation have been around for decades, actually predating Donald Trump's involvement in politics. In fact, here's a video from the former director of Project 2025 saying Trump has nothing to do with what we're doing here.
You know, the breaking news is Trump has nothing to do with Project 2025. Sure, a lot of us have worked in the admin and came together, but this started long before he even announced for president.
And the lies about Donald Trump don't stop there. On debate night, she brought up the very fine people quote from Donald Trump and essentially insinuated that Donald Trump was complimenting neo-Nazis and white nationalists. But let's look at the actual quote.
And you had some very bad people in that group, but you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name. And you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally.
And this has been fact-checked on several occasions by several publications. And let's move on from Trump and bring us to where we're at now with hurricane season, where hurricanes are ravaging the eastern part of the United States. Kamala Harris claims that she tried to call Governor Ron DeSantis and help him with the hurricane relief that he's going to need on the other end of Hurricane Milton, and that he declined the call to play political games.
President, Governor DeSantis, NBC is reporting Governor DeSantis is ignoring your calls on hurricanes, resources, and help. How does that hurt the situation here?
You know, moments of crisis, if nothing else, should really be the moment that anyone who calls themselves a leader says they're going to put politics aside and put the people first. People are in desperate need of support right now, and playing political games with this moment in these crisis situations, these are the height of emergency situations, is just utterly irresponsible, and it is selfish, and it is about political gamesmanship instead of doing the job that you took an oath to do, which is to put the people first.
I have a working theory. Maybe when Kamala Harris made the call to Governor Ron DeSantis, she didn't have the headphones plugged into her phone and actually couldn't hear him, you know, because she's posting all these photos about how she's working on Hurricane Helene, and it just so happens that while she has headphones in her ear, they're not plugged into the jack on the phone. But luckily, we don't have to lean on my theories. Governor DeSantis has responded, and so is Kamala.
Now, he said this morning, you've never called regarding any of the storms Florida has had since you've been vice president until apparently now, and called it political. What's your response to that?
Well, first of all, I have called and talked with, in the course of this crisis, this most recent crisis, Democrat and Republican governors. Called, taken the call, answered the call, had a conversation. So obviously, this is not an issue that is about partisanship or politics for certain leaders, but maybe is for others.
Now let's hear Ron's response.
I am working with the President of the United States. I'm working with the Director of FEMA. I'm marshaling all my state assets. We've been doing this now nonstop for over 2 weeks between Helene and this. And so if there's anything I can leverage to benefit my people, I'm going to do it. The fact of the matter is they put out a story saying I didn't even know she was trying to reach me, but she has no role in this process. And I've been dealing with these storms in Florida under both Trump and Biden. Neither of them ever politicized it. And in fact, all the storms I've dealt with under this administration, although I've worked well with the president, she has never called in Florida. She has never offered any support. So what she's doing is she's trying to inject herself into this because of her political campaign. So as the governor here who's leading this, I don't have time for those games. I don't care about her campaign. Obviously, I'm not a supporter of hers, but she has no role in this process. And so I'm working with the people I need to be working with. We're leveraging the resources I need to be leveraging. And for her to try to say that my focus should be on catering to her rather than worrying about my own people just shows she doesn't understand what it means to respond to these natural disasters.
So who's making it political after all? Instead of focusing on playing political games, which it seems is exactly what Kamala Harris is doing, maybe she should focus on being well-versed on what's actually happening on the ground when it comes to these hurricanes. Because here's a clip of her during a live broadcast having her aides help her on the side, giving her questions, and she has to remind them that they're live.
Flood. We really got to watch those areas and those communities. So it takes quite a while for that water to drain.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Ken, I have a question for you. You mentioned words matter, and I know there is a lot of media following this briefing.
Guys, when you cover your mouth, it doesn't stop the mic from working. It's a live broadcast. Who really should we worry about when it comes to bearing the responsibility of having a microphone on them?
And thinks he should be president of the United States standing behind the seal of the president of the United States using the microphone that comes with that?
And I get it, Trump can sometimes say some crazy sounding things, like that Kamala Harris is a supporter of sex change transitions for those who are inmates in the American prison system. But let's hear from Kamala on that.
When I was Attorney General, I learned that the California Department of Corrections, which was a client of mine, I didn't get to choose my clients.
Right, a client of the Attorney General.
A client of the Attorney General, right. Of the Office of Attorney General, that they were standing in the way of surgery.
For prisoners.
For prisoners. And there was a specific case. And when I learned about the case, I worked behind the scenes to not only make sure that that transgender woman got the services she was deserving. So it wasn't only about that case. I made sure that they changed the policy in the state of California so that every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access to the medical care that they desired and need. And I believe it was not only, I know it was historic in California, but I believe actually it may have been one of the first, if not the first in the country, where I pushed for that policy in a Department of Corrections.
But no, we had to meme that and make jokes about it. President Donald Trump accuses Kamala Harris of wanting to perform sex changes on inmates, but it turns out it is in fact true. And on this stance in particular, even many on the left were saying she was too radical.
Let's just take immigration and look at what she said here. She said on immigration, she made this open-ended pledge to end immigrant detention. She said she supported taxpayer-funded gender transition surgeries for detained migrants. She also said she supported
taxpayer-funded gender transition surgeries for detained migrants.
She
actually said she supported that.
She both wrote and answered in the affirmative when she was asked this.
Do we need to hear more? It's not so funny, haha, is it now? We don't really want to put memes out about it now because it's in fact true and super weird and super radical. Even the left can recognize it. But you know what? Maybe Kamala Harris has had a change of heart. She's flipped her mind on the issue. She seems to do that quite a bit. So much so that in her 60 Minutes interview, which was quite friendly overall, the interviewer had to press her on her flip-flopping on all these different topics. Here's what she said.
Let me tell you what your critics and the columnists say.
Okay.
They say that the reason so many voters don't know you is that you have changed your position on so many things. You were against fracking, now you're for it. You supported looser immigration policies, now you're tightening them up. You were for Medicare for all, now you're not. So many that people don't truly know what you believe or what you stand for. And I know you've heard that.
In the last 4 years, I have been Vice President of the United States. And I have been traveling our country. And I have been listening to folks and seeking what is possible in terms of common ground. I believe in building consensus. We are a diverse people, geographically, regionally, in terms of where we are in our backgrounds. And what the American people do want is that we have leaders who can build consensus, where we can figure out compromise and understand it's not a bad thing, as long as you don't compromise your values, to find common sense solutions. And that has been my approach.
As long as you don't compromise on your values. And here's really the kicker, and it's what this entire video is about. Kamala Harris has no values. There is no values that she's beholden to. She goes wherever the wind takes her. She says whatever she feels she needs to say in order to get to the next position. She's done it her entire life. She's done it her entire political career, and she's doing it now as she's vying for the position of leader of the free world. You're president. And she thinks you're stupid. She thinks you're not going to be able to pin her down and figure out what she actually believes. And I'll admit it is a very hard task indeed to figure out who this woman actually is and what she actually believes, especially when you couple it with the fact that the media is constantly running cover for her. Remember, Kamala Harris was a candidate that nobody liked, nobody wanted. Even when she was running against her fellow Democrats, she was at the bottom of the totem pole. She wasn't a well-liked vice president, but suddenly she's the golden girl who should be sitting in the Oval Office. The golden girl that the Democratic Party didn't want and didn't vote for. They were only forced to have her because of Joe Biden failing and dropping out of the run for re-election. But they all knew that was going to happen, right? I hope this video has made it abundantly clear that we have no idea who Kamala Harris actually is. We have to go off thousands of statements that she's made in the past and present and try to put them together to sort of figure out where she stands on issues. We know at the very least that when she is untrained and unscripted, left to her own devices, she is an extremely radical ideologue. And when she is scripted and trained, we get a hollow, empty suit puppet who can barely stick to the script. And it is so abundantly clear that she is just saying what needs to be said in order to get by. And all of this strategy, if we can call it that, is leaning on the support of you not recognizing that you are being lied to, of you not recognizing the games that they're playing, the narratives that they're spinning, the lies that they're telling, the flip-flopping on the issues. But we've got it all right here. And if you want to know what a Kamala Harris presidency is going to look like, honestly, I can't tell you. Given the thousands of different answers answers she's given on any given topic. She's a candidate of change, yet she would change nothing that was done in the past 3.5 years. She lies about her personal stories and lies about the stories of fellow Americans, some of whom have suffered or died, in order to spin a certain narrative and get you to feel a certain way. In the face of crisis, when Americans are depending on her and her leadership, she fails and she looks to her aides in order to be told what to say. So who would really be running the country after all? She takes on only the friendliest of interviews, and when she's met with even a little bit of combatants, she crumbles or spits out word salad with no actual answer in anything. And when faced with issues that we as Americans are facing every single day that she will never understand, she can't give solutions, or the solutions she tries to give are the most radical possible. And you know what? I'm not falling for it. I hope you're not falling for it either. If you know somebody who maybe is, send them this video so that they can see her lies, so they can get the actual facts, because this is some hard stuff to track down. Who has the time to look through years of statements from a candidate when they continuously lie to your face and the media runs cover for them, editing their interviews to make them look good?
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
Matter of fact, send this video to everyone you know. Do you know you have 30 minutes?
Do you know you have 30 minutes? Are you kidding me? 30, yes.
Because the election is right around the corner, and I think a lot of people need to see what's been laid out here. And maybe we'll do a part 2 because there are so many lies down the pipeline. Maybe we'll cover how the media is running cover for Kamala Harris, literally. Let me know in the comments down below if there are other ideas you have, because we don't have much time. We better get cooking. And with that, I will leave you guys. I've laid out enough information. What you do with it is on you. But as I said, share this with everybody you know. If you like this video, like, subscribe, click the notification bell to be notified every single time I post a video for you guys, which is every day. And as always, if you disagree with anything I've said in this video, fact check me as I've fact checked Kamala. Let me know in the comments down below. I encourage healthy debate on this channel. With that, I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye, guys.
Yeah, you better. Yeah, you better.